Namaste and welcome to our webinar on the Renaissance of Sanatana Dharma in the light of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Our guest is Dr. Sampad Ananda Mishra, and kind of the general framework is the way in which the writings and eloquence of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother can be applied to humanity, to what's going on in today's world, and help shape the future, right? And that phrase I love is that he prophesized that the renaissance of Sanatana Dharma was both necessary and inevitable. And so Dr. Mishra is going to get into how maybe his journey of exploring the Mother, maybe some background on Sri Aurobindo and how that trajectory. And then we can take some questions, and at the end of it, after he gets into describing his course and any questions. I don't know if you have a PowerPoint presentation. You usually don't use a PowerPoint, correct?
No, I'm not using.
Great. So let me just give you a quick introduction and hand it off to you. And you're still working.
Just speaking and interacting.
Yeah. And it's always a great conversation. We love your presentation. So right now, Dr. Mishra, you're still working at the Rashtraam School of Public Leadership in Rishihood University in Sonipat. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Great. So Dr. Mishra is in Sonipat. Krista from Germany, welcome. And Dr. Mishra has spoken at various conferences, I think all across Europe, America, Asia, seminars, literary and religious festivals, nationally and internationally, on Sanskrit, Indian culture, yoga, education. And you're a devotee of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. You're familiar with their writings, and obviously feel comfortable delivering lectures on the philosophy and the practices. So with that, let me hand it off to you to get us started. And if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A box. Please let us know that quick background if you've taken the course with Dr. Mishra before, or a course, and kind of that background, and I'll share that in a little bit. Actually, you filled out enough. There you go. Let's take a look at that. So we have about 25 people with us today. 6 people have taken a course at HUA before, 14 have not taken a course, and a lot of folks have been on a few webinars with us. So glad to have you on for you first time joining us for a webinar, and the regular attendees always appreciate you. So Dr. Mishra, with that, let me hand it to you to talk about Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and how you present and why it's so important for humanity, and how you're sharing that word, and how Hindu University of America has served as a platform to get this information out to more and more people.
Thank you, Ankur, and also thank you to the HUA family for spreading the message of Sanatana Dharma through various courses. And this particular course is this is the second batch which is going on, and we are now going to launch the second part. After the first part of the course, we are going to launch the second part of the course. It's a 3-semester course. So in the first part of the course, mostly we concentrate on the fundamentals of Sanatana Dharma, an introduction to the overview of Sri Aurobindo's life and work, his teachings, and his philosophy, and his contribution to Indian culture, literature. Concept of Sanatana Dharma is these are covered in the first part of the course. In the second part of the course, which is going to be launched, for which all those who have not attended the first part also can take the part 2 of the course, because each part, each semester, each session is also an independent session. So that's the beauty of the course design, that even within a part, although there is no facility for taking just few modules in a part, either first part or second part or third part, so one has to take it as a whole, the whole part. but in a whole part also, like every session is an independent session. So in the second part, we are going to contemplate on the fundamental texts or foundational texts of Sanatana Dharma. So for example, like we will have an introduction to the Rishi tradition of Bharat. So what are the contributions of the Rishis? And it's actually um, the contribution of Rishis which has made India, India, which has made this civilization lasting for a long, and it is because of the contribution of the Rishis that today, after so many thousands of years, that Indian civilization has a living presence. So we will be discussing about the Rishis, the types of Rishis, their lives, what are their contributions, what they aspired for, what processes, what disciplines they followed in order to fulfill their aspirations, and then how their fulfillment, how their realizations are relevant to the present age, and how we can learn through the contributions of the rishis by knowing about them the foundations of Sanatana Dharma. So we will also have an introduction to the Veda. We will have introduction to the various aspects of the Veda. For example, like when we turn to the Veda, every letter that we find in the Vedic Samhita is mantra. Then we will have an introduction to what are the mantras, how are they revealed, and who receives the mantras, or to whom the mantras reveal. And then how do we understand the inner significances and the inner symbolism of the mantra? How do we practice the mantra? How do we proceed with the mantra yoga sadhana? How do we enter into the spirit of the Veda, spirit of the mantra? So what is the discipline that we need? We will have a full session on the importance of yajna, because yajna is very, very central to the Vedic tradition, the Sanatana Dharma. So it is yajna which is at the center, and then everything else is organized around the yajna. But yajna again symbolically means self-giving. That's the inner meaning of yajna. So it has an outer aspect. It also has an inner aspect. So both the external and the internal importance and significances of yajna will be discussed in this session. Then we will have a full session on the secret of the Veda. So you will know that Sri Aurobindo, his contribution to the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, the foundations of Indian culture, the fundamentals of yoga, philosophy, Indian culture are immense. And he has thrown a new light on every aspect of Sanatana Dharma. So his Secret of the Veda is one of the most significant books on the Veda. So where he reveals the true secret of the Veda, because Sri Aurobindo always believed that the Veda to be the concealed divinity in Hinduism. And there is a way how the secret can be revealed, and that he has shown that processes of understanding the Veda. And Sri Aurobindo's interpretation of the Veda is different in the sense that there are three elements which are important to the interpretation of the Veda. Sri Aurobindo first used his own realizations, deeper realizations. Before he came in contact with the Veda, Sri Aurobindo himself says, while correcting his own biographies written by others, so he says that he had no contact with the Veda. He had no contact with the Veda before he came to Pondicherry. So he had a thorough contact with the Upanishads, with the Gita, with the Ramayana, with the Mahabharata, with many classical literature, Kalidas, Bhartrihari, Bhavabhuti, Jayadeva, Panini, and many other poets. But he had literally no contact with the Veda before he came to Pondicherry. But he had a lot of realizations What the Vedic seers and sages realized so many thousands of years before, Sri Aurobindo realized those in his life. When he turned to the Veda, he found his own realizations. Whatever he had realized, the different deities, Ila, Saraswati, Mahi, Bharati, and many other deities who had revealed themselves to Sri Aurobindo. So Veda was a confirmation to Sri Aurobindo's own realization when he came in contact with the Veda. And this is where he took deeper interest. Then he combined his whole knowledge of philology, because he himself was a polyglot, expert in many languages: Greek, Latin, Tamil, Sanskrit, Bengali, Spanish, Italian, French, German, Marathi, Hindustani, and so many languages. He was an expert. So, and also he had received from Sri Krishna a new science of language, because he himself had mentioned about it when he was asked by Subramanya Bharati how he was interpreting the Veda in a different way. Sri Aurobindo had said to Subramanya Bharati by responding to his question, he said that Sri Krishna has shown me a new science of language based on which a new interpretation of the Veda will be given. So when we turn to Sri Aurobindo's Secret of the Veda, we find that the philology, psychology, and his inner realizations, these three factors have made Secret of the Veda very, very significant when we want to understand what Sanatana Dharma is, and for which the Veda is the foundational text. So in order to understand and then enter into the secret chamber of the Veda, so it is the secret of the Veda of Sri Aurobindo which throws a new light, a practical aspect of the Veda. How do we enter into the spirit? How do we understand the Vedic system of yoga? How do we understand the symbolism behind every word, every keyword of the Veda? How do we understand who are these different deities? Indra, Agni, Varuna, Yama, Mitra, Aryama, Bhaga, Ila, Saraswati, Mahi, Bharati, Sarama, and which are the negative forces like Pani, Vritra, and many other deities, Vishnu, Rudra, and what their functionalities. So Sri Aurobindo has revealed in his Secret of the Veda in a very practical way, connecting it to the human consciousness. So it is not only that we are studying the Veda, or as many people, like understand it as some kind of religious text, or some spiritual text, but one finds a greater psychology. Sri Aurobindo, through his Secret of the Veda, has opened petal by petal the human consciousness, every aspect of human consciousness. He has connected with the different deities because he himself could realize those deities in his own consciousness. So while studying the Secret of the Veda, one finds that it is as if one's own story, one's own journey, like the human consciousness. Every aspect of the human consciousness is well taken care of in the Secret of the Veda. So then we have his contribution to the Upanishads. So we find immense contribution of Sri Aurobindo in terms of interpreting the Upanishad, though he has not covered all the principal Upanishads, but at least the 8 principal Upanishads: Isha, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mandukya, Aitareya, Taittiriya. These 8 Upanishads are interpreted by Sri Aurobindo. Among these 8 also, like Ishopanishad, he has a very long commentary, around 700 pages of commentary on Ishopanishad, and so many drafts. Initial drafts on Ishopanishad, they were available under the title Life Divine, but then he kept refining it, and then we have a very crisp interpretation of Ishopanishad, which is very profound, practical, and much of the paradoxical verses in Ishopanishad can be well understood by entering into Sri Aurobindo's commentary. In the same way, he also interpreted fully with long commentary on Kena Upanishad. The rest of the Upanishads will have short commentaries, though many people consider that as translations of the mantras. Sri Aurobindo never intended or never preferred to use the word translation. Rather, he preferred the word interpretation, simply because he said at some other places while writing on translating Upanishads or translating Kalidas, he made it clear that translating Sanskrit into any European language is an impossibility, because there is so much of gap between the culture of both the languages. So therefore, an interpretation is a possibility that one can interpret, but Sanskrit remains as an untranslatable. So today, if we want to understand the importance of Sanskrit as an untranslatable language, it is Sri Aurobindo who had shown the way, who had shown to the whole world that how Sanskrit is an untranslatable language. And what actually it means by untranslatable nature of Sanskrit, then how this problem of untranslatable nature of Sanskrit can be handled and things can be interpreted and better expressed through any other European language. So then other Europeans who are not familiar with Sanskrit or any other Indian languages or even Indian culture, have no association with this culture, civilizational values, yet can get into the spirit of the civilizational values, the cultural values, the spiritual heritage of Bharat, the Rishi tradition of Bharat. So that's where we find that Sri Aurobindo has done an immense job in interpreting the Upanishads. The same way we find that his interpretation of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So though he had studied Ramayana and Mahabharata fully, and he had a purpose, he had a plan to translate and interpret the entire Ramayana and the entire Mahabharata, but he couldn't do it. But most of his poems, and we know like Sri Aurobindo as one of the greatest poets. So his Savitri till date remains as the greatest poem in English, 24,000 lines. So no one has written any poem in English which is bigger than Savitri. Even till date, it remains as the longest or biggest poetry in English. So the same way, like most of his poems, the inspiration he draws from the Mahabharata, whether you call it Love and Death or Nala Damayanti or many other poems. So he draws the inspiration, he takes the many episodes from the Mahabharata and recreates, transcreates, and then brings out his own poetry. So Mahabharata always remained an inspiration to him. Even his epic poetry, Savitri, is entirely taken from the Savitri and Satyavan Upakhyan in the Mahabharata. So similarly, many episodes of Ramayana also, like, he converted into his poetry. And he transcreated some of the portions of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So his views on various aspects of Ramayana and Mahabharata are unparalleled. And let me share an anecdote with you all that during that time, Ramesh Chandra Datta, he was one of the greatest translators of Ramayana and Mahabharata. And he happened to meet Sri Aurobindo, and then he discussed with him about his translation. And it was during this meeting, Sri Aurobindo showed some of his translations to him of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So after going through the translations, or rather interpretations of Sri Aurobindo of the verses of Ramayana and Mahabharata, so Ramesh Chandra Datta told him that, look, in front of your translation, my translation looks so childish. So I should not have shown you my translation. That was the comment by Ramesh Chandra Datta. So Is there any question which I have to
No, that was
reply?
amazing. I just got enthralled. I even looked up a little bit of stuff while this was going on, and we have a few questions by the audience. But every time, and I'm so glad that you've created this course and the other courses as self-contained. So, sometimes this is part two. People may have taken your previous course, and the way that you broke down the composition, so you're really going to dig deep into the text from Sri Aurobindo's commentaries on the different texts and give it all context. And then even within that, you're saying each one of your courses, each class session is kind of self-contained as well.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so there will be replays. All of our courses are recorded. This webinar is recorded. If you want to go back and watch it again or share it with somebody else, we'll send that in an email after. Archana ji from California, glad to have you on again today. Balaji from Boston, welcome, welcome. So please, if you have any questions for Dr. Mishra, drop them in the Q&A box and we can get to them.
We can invite questions a little later. So,
okay.
Yeah. So this is because I saw some questions popped off in the chat box. So I thought maybe like, do I need to answer anything now, or I can just go on?
Keep on going if you still, yes.
So Sri Aurobindo's contribution to the Vedas, to the Upanishads, which we will be discussing, and in the second part of the course, and then his essays on the Gita. Let me tell you that when I first came in contact with the essays on the Gita of Sri Aurobindo, and then after that, it seemed that there is nothing left to study, in the sense that it created so much of clarity with regard to the teaching of the Gita, and then made the Gita, the way he has made the teachings of the Gita so practical that everyone, after studying Sri Aurobindo's essays on the Gita, has that clarity of how the teaching of the Gita, which is meant to liberate the humanity from all its limitations, one can apply those teachings into one's own life and then see the result. That's the power of Sri Aurobindo's interpretation, like how he has made it so practical, so clear, crystal clear, that you come and then read the Gita and look at essays in the Gita of Sri Aurobindo, the interpretation, the way he has interpreted, though Sri Aurobindo's language is very, very tough, yet if one has an open mind and reads it again and again few times, and one has the clarity. And every time we turn to Sri Aurobindo's writings, every time we discover something new, something fresh, something deeper, more clarity is added to our understanding. So we will be discussing in the course also an introduction to the Gita in the light of Sri Aurobindo, like how Sri Aurobindo's interpretation is very different from others, adding more clarity and then bringing out the practical value of Sri Aurobindo's, of the teachings of the Gita. The same way, we will also have an introduction to the Tantra. Why Tantra? Because Sri Aurobindo considered Tantra as to be the most scientific system of yoga, the most scientific system of yoga. And if you look at the spiritual heritage, the spiritual tradition of Sanatana Dharma, this whole history of Sanatana Dharma, the Veda, the Upanishads, and the Gita and the Tantra, these four are as if, like four pillars of India's spiritual tradition. And if we need to understand the deeper aspects of Sanatana Dharma, we need to have a basic understanding initially of these four texts. And we need to have, say for example, like when we turn to the Veda, I will come back again to the Tantra aspect. Like we need to focus on the uh, realizations of the rishis, or what is the uh, essential teaching of all these different texts. Say, for example, like when we summarize the whole teaching of the Veda, the Vedic rishis, whether we take the Rig Veda, whether we take Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, all the different mantras. So, how do we come to a conclusion? What is the Nishkars? What is the essential teaching of the Veda? What is Vedic system of yoga? The way Sri Aurobindo has done it in his Secret of the Veda is amazing and is so practical. It adds so much of clarity. I repeat again and again that Sri Aurobindo adds more clarity to the understanding of any aspect of Sanatana Dharma. So, for example, like Sri Aurobindo has summarized the Vedic system of yoga in 4 sentences. He says that in order to know what Vedic system of yoga is, what is the essential teachings of the Veda, we need to understand the 4 great realizations of the rishis. So what are these 4 great realizations? So he says, like the first realization of the rishis in the Veda is that the rishi realized through his sadhana, by following his discipline, that the world in which we live, the light that we see, the truth that we understand in this world, so there is something bigger than this. There is something beyond this world. There is beyond this light. There is beyond the truth that we understand here. So there is a greater world. There is a greater truth. There is a greater light. And the human being must make effort to attain to this greater world of light, truth, and the greater joy, the greater happiness that one wants to experience ultimately. But at the ordinary level, whatever we experience, we must know that there is something greater than this. So, if there is something beyond, then the second realization is that there is a way that man must discover for himself in order to ascend to that supreme light, or that greater world, that greater truth, that greater ananda. So that's the second realization. And the third realization, Sri Aurobindo says that there is a constant battle which is going on within every human being. It's a battle in the human consciousness. It is the aspect of the division and duality and binary by which human consciousness is affected. So every human being suffers from this division, these binaries, these dualities. So this battle is a constant battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness, battle between ignorance and knowledge, battle between devas and asuras. And it is a constant battle, constant battle. And what is to be done? So Sri Aurobindo says that the Vedic rishis, they found out the way. If we want to get victory over the forces of darkness, the negative forces, the adverse forces, the ignorant forces, if we need to get victory over them, then we need to keep the gods as our companion. So we need to be on the side of the God. We need to do our sadhana in such a manner that we allow the gods to grow in our consciousness. We need to manifest the divinity within us. We need to cling to the truth. We need to cling to the light. We need to cling to the purity. We need to cling to all that is pure, all that is harmonious, all that is beautiful, all that is joyous, all that is, full of light and delight. So if like Krishna, Arjuna always had chosen Krishna to be on his side, whatever the situation may be. So Arjuna had kept Krishna as his comrade, as his Sakha. That is why the victory was with him. The same way, so in the Veda, we see that all the rishis, they pray, they invoke the gods to be with them. That was the third realization. And the fourth realization of the rishi was that ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. That there is a truth which is the one truth. But that one truth, though alone, absolute, it does manifest in multiple forms and diverse forms. Bahudha vadanti, many forms. That's the beauty of Sanatana Dharma, that it has never confined itself to one and absolute, but it has allowed itself to manifest in various forms, infinite forms. So ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. We and so clearly, so beautifully, so categorically, Sri Aurobindo has explained it in the Secret of the Veda. Then the symbolism, the symbolic words. Every key word in the Veda, we need to understand the deeper symbolism behind. And that's what we find in the entire Secret of the Veda. The same way, when we come to the Upanishads, we see the greater psychology that Sri Aurobindo has brought out through his interpretation, the practical aspect of sadhana that he has brought out through his interpretation. The same way, when we turn to the Gita, we see how he has made the Gita's teaching so practical. When we turn to the Tantras, we find, like, when we look at Tantra in the light of Sri Aurobindo, here again we see the vision of the Tantra is that the life's journey is a journey from man animal to man human to man divine. That is why Sri Aurobindo's philosophy, Sri Aurobindo's yoga was concentrated on establishing the divine life on the earth. Because ultimately, this animal, this limited, this bound human consciousness, which is called Pashu in the language of the Tantra, must raise himself to become the hero warrior, to become the human, must realize the humanness, must become free from all kinds of limitations, all kinds of weaknesses, and stand before the divine, stand before himself with the head raised, that he can say to his own God that, look, I am your child, free from all weaknesses. And it is then that one can realize one's own divinity, which is concealed within everyone. That is the life of the divine life. So from man animal to man human to man divine, this is the journey. And this journey is very clearly worked out, the pathways, the processes, and what are the ingredients one needs in order to succeed in this journey and then become a siddha, become a perfect person, or become a fully bloomed personality, or an integral person, having no weakness within oneself, and then having a fully bloomed consciousness. So that is where the Tantra has worked out the processes, the disciplines. And Sri Aurobindo's yoga, integral yoga, draws much inspiration from the vision of the Tantra, from the working out of the Tantra, from the discipline of the Tantra. So in order to understand Sri Aurobindo, our knowledge of the Veda, Upanishad, Gita, Vedanta, Brahma Sutra, and the Tantra, and various other philosophical texts, they are of a great help. And Sri Aurobindo, though it is he is difficult for many people, for me it was easy because I had a background of the Vedic Upanishadic and the tantric teachings, and my basic introduction to Sanskrit. So if one is a student of Sanskrit, if one is a student of the Veda, Upanishad, Gita, and Tantra, and various other philosophical texts, so Sri Aurobindo becomes easy. At the same time, if one is a student of Sri Aurobindo, has gone through the writings of Sri Aurobindo, is familiar with the writings of Sri Aurobindo, even the Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, Tantra, and various other texts in Sanskrit become simple and clear and understandable. So they both are complementary to each other. So with this purpose, we have designed this course, an introduction to the Sanatana Dharma. And in the second part, as I said, that we will have an introduction to the Vedas, to the Upanishads, to the Gita, and to the Tantra, and various other aspects connected with the Veda and Tantra and the Gita. So, for example, like we will begin the whole session with an introduction to the Rishi tradition of Bharat, where we will look at who is a Rishi and how did they create a discipline in order to enter into the secret of the mantra, and then who are the greatest, some of the greatest rishis whose contributions have made the civilization survive for such a long time. Similarly, we will have an introduction to the Veda, to the aspect of the mantra, to the aspect of the yajna, to the aspect of the symbolism, to the aspect of the keywords in the Veda. We will similarly have an introduction to the Upanishads and also see through various stories the disciplines in the Upanishads. So Upanishads not only they describe about the Brahman or give the teachings of the Brahman, they also show from the Upanishads, we also find out what are the disciplines which are responsible in realizing the Supreme Brahman. So those disciplines were known as Vidya. So we have around 32 Vidyas described in the Upanishads, maybe even a little more than 32. So you have Samvarga Vidya, Bhuma Vidya, Vaishwanara Vidya, and various Vidyas like this 32 or more Vidyas in the Upanishads, which are actually manuals of sadhana. We find elaborate discussion on how a particular knowledge or particular siddhi can be attained to, what are the processes. So we will have a discussion, a full session on the Vidyas in the Upanishads. Similarly, we'll have an introduction to the Gita, an introduction to the Tantra, and then summarize the essential teachings of all the foundational texts of Sanatana Dharma. So that's what is an introduction to the structure of the course and a little bit of introduction to what we are going to learn the foundational texts in the light of Sri Aurobindo. So with this, I will stop and then I invite if there are questions, accordingly, I will take forward the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for that outline. Darya ji says, it is a pleasure to listen and learn from Sampadananda ji. Yes, I agree. Balaji, sure, you can send suggestions to us however that fits. We got up to 40 people. So that's nice to have some of you maybe invite some friends on board to hear from Dr. Mishra, but no questions yet in the Q&A box. Does anybody have any, or you could raise your hand if you'd like to voice your question. But in the meantime, I will launch a question of my own. Are you interested in enrolling in the course, Renaissance of Sanatana Dharma in the Light of Sri Aurobindo? Kind of added the mother. I know there's like a relationship there. Somebody asked about it before and you probably get into it in some way. So please let us know if you are interested in the course. Yes, no, maybe. Just helps us either way, even if it is a no. Keep track and follow up efficiently. So please, and I will put some details of the course in the chat right now. It is a 1 unit course, 1 credit union. So it comes out to $200 for the quarter. and I'll drop a link and some details. The timing of the course as well is going to be on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time. That's kind of the time that works for the entire world. And it's very beautiful to see people from around the world joining these courses with Dr. Mishra, with other courses that Hindu University of America is offering. But this one in particular, I think you will enjoy. And again, just right now in this Zoom session, the way that Dr. Mishra was able to share and elaborate the high level background on Sri Aurobindo, and this work, you're going to get depth, week by week, quarter by class by class, which is organized in our learning management system. You get login information, readings and all of that are uploaded. So we do all of that. Okay, Balaji, I see that you have risen your hand, and let me give you that opportunity to talk. And Rajendraji, yeah, we talked about this a little while ago. You can enroll in the second course even if you did not take the first. The way that Dr. Mishra has designed the courses, he's designed them to be self-contained. So if you did not take course 1, that is fine. That is okay. Course 2 is going to have a different focus, but does not require you to have taken 1. So Rajendraji, thank you for that question. And Balaji, go ahead.
I'm from Aurobindo Ashram, brought up there. He knows me, Sanatana very much. I come here to Boston to my son's place, and I have quite a lot of people, being from IT, a lot of people who are my Indian and European acquaintances. Actually, I'm not acquainted to speak on it, though I have studied almost all the books that he has mentioned. People put a question, because that one I would like, because Sampadananji will be able to explain it, that it should not be labeled as only Hinduism, and it is a universal dharma, universal religion. Sampadananji, why we always discuss on that point, Vishwa Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and all. So this course should access by any person following any faith, any nationality, or any other, because nowadays people have citizenship of US, but they have connection with India, and then some are in Aurobindo, such Europeans who are scholars of Sanatana Dharma. So will it be, how to recommend them? Many people have been asking me, and the moment they see that it is Sanatana Dharma, because now religion has become a very controversial topic. So can we just add a few sentences to it to make it as a global, futuristic world need? I think you are the right person for it. I know it. I know him too well. He is my closest associate in Pondicherry Ashram.
Great. Thank you, Balaji.
Because I have to, recommend many people, and I think a lot of us do. Content to make it, because I was brought up there 60 years back. I'm earliest, and my grandfather has been from the time of Sri Aurobindo. And we had classes of mother taking our classes. So that is different. No, that I don't want to talk about I would love to recommend a lot of my I'm from IT, professional acquaintances, global contacts, but they think that the moment we say Sanatana Dharma or this, they label it as religion. So how would you make it appear? It's not a religion, it is the future science of the world.
Great question. Let's hear Dr. Mishra's
response. Let's hear how he's going to. A request to make it so that hundreds of people are interested. But the moment they think religion, now religion has become a very controversial topic. So Sampadananji, you are the right person. I would like to see you in Pondicherry, if possible, next few months. I'm going back. So
great.
Yes, so
we have to give the horizon change to them. Same truth, same thing, only label changing. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, so that is always there, that how do we level it, the course, so then there is no mm, this confinement to a particular religion. But when we are talking, it's usually known that Sanatana Dharma is not a very constricted dharma. In that sense, the very name itself is universal and eternal dharma. So if we translate it also like into English or any other language, the word Sanatana means like that which belongs to eternity. Sana in Sanskrit means eternity. Tana means belongs to eternity. And Sri Aurobindo, when we turn to the interpretation of Sri Aurobindo of the Vedas, of Upanishads, of the Gita, and I assure anyone who comes in contact with these writings will never have a constricted idea of, like dharma. So Sri Aurobindo opens up like anything, opens to the whole world, to the humanity, because Sri Aurobindo's basic idea is to spread the religion of humanity, going beyond all kinds of religiosity, going beyond all kinds of constricted ideas connected with the religion, going beyond all the outer and limited aspects of any religion, but concentrate on the religion of humanity. What matters is the human consciousness. Therefore, the approach of Sri Aurobindo is a consciousness approach, like how the limited human consciousness can be expanded and transformed and then raised to its vastness, its infinitude. So because in a narrow and limited consciousness, every problem exists, because the root cause of all our problems, as the Gita says, karpanya doshopahata swabhava, so is rooted in the karpanya dosha, miserliness, meanness, narrowness. The real happiness one can experience only by being settled in an expanded consciousness. And Sri Aurobindo's interpretation of the Veda, Upanishads, Gita, Tantra, it simply gives this message of transforming our limited consciousness into the vast consciousness, allowing the gods to grow in our consciousness. Like it's by coming in contact and then reading Sri Aurobindo and reading the Veda, reading the Upanishads, the Gita, the foundational texts of Sanatana Dharma, then only we can truly understand and then become rid of the problems, the constricted views, the limited ideas that people have with regard to the Dharma. But definitely for marketing purpose, one can even change the title and to attract more people, yet it will remain as the message of Sanatana Dharma.
Yes, thank you for that. Going from the narrow to the wide, including and inclusive. Really appreciate that. So now the naming and all of that, I love how you articulated the purpose of this is to overcome all of that and use, not just the course, but the writing, the commentary, all of the work of Sri Aurobindo to get there. And this course is one of three, and we have a couple questions on the details of the course. Of course, Sanskrit is not needed to understand the Vedas, right? You had the conversation on translatable versus interpreted, right? And I guess Sri Aurobindo did that. So that question of, for the course, you don't need to know Sanskritam. You're going to do a lot of it in it's English medium, and you'll interpret the words accordingly and go from there. And then also just the focus of the difference between this course and the first course and the third course. If you could just kind of outline the little differences. I think a lot more people, at least a few more people came in after you had done that earlier in the webinar, and just make that clear. Yeah, Dr. Mishra? Oh, you're typing it out. Okay.
I'm just going through the questions in the question box. So there is a question that how much of Sanskrit one needs to know. Is that, yeah, how much Sanskrit one need to know to understand the Vedas? Yeah, if someone has a basic background of Sanskrit, it really helps. But if one doesn't have a basic background of Sanskrit, still one can approach the Vedas and Upanishads and the Gita, but by going through a really good commentary. So one can get into the basic understanding of the Upanishads, but definitely Sanskrit helps a lot. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And again, the idea of your 3 courses, what does each of them focus on and differentiate for some of our folks who came in a little bit late?
Yeah, the difference, as I said, like the first part of the course is more focused on an introduction to Sri Aurobindo's life and teachings, and introduction to Indian culture, introduction to Indian spirituality, the idea of dharma, the idea of purushartha. These are the um, the basic teachings of the first part. And in the second part, the upcoming part is going to be focused only on the foundational texts like the Veda, Upanishad, Gita, and Tantra. And in the third part of the course, we will be taking up more concepts like concept of avatarhood, concept of karma, the concept of say uh, the what do you call dharma, karma, purushartha, brahmacharya. The most important concepts of Sanatana Dharma will be covered in the third part. But the second part is focused only on the texts, introduction to the texts.
Great. Thank you, Roxanne, for that question. Right, Rajendraji, got yours, and Dr. Mishra kind of responded. Hareshi on the Ayurveda and nutrition well-being, will touch a base on that later. Right, in the 2 courses, I think that was what we just covered. The Ayurveda courses separately, you can email me and we'll get into that. Right, and that's part of what Hindu University of America is. This is part of the continuing education division. There's a whole certificate program in Hindu studies, and Dr. Mishra's classes, all 3 of them, count towards that certificate program. So it's better to have a whole grounding and understanding and a longer articulation in all of these concepts, because there's so much, right? Dr. Mishra has turned this one deep dive for Sri Aurobindo into 3 courses. And so with all of Hinduism, we have many, many courses, and the way that we're presenting that is not just one quarter, one off, but through these programs and these arcs of courses with wonderful teachers and faculty and gurus who have expertise in their respective areas that fits into this mosaic of Hindu ideas, Sanatana Dharma, and how we're presenting it. So Hareshi, thank you for that question. We'll do a separate follow-up. Yeah, Sri Aurobindo, we got into that at the start, kind of the background and how we got into that. Maybe in the concluding statement, Dr. Mishra will again summarize a little bit and get into that. And then Krista Barbara is asking, no knowledge of Sanskrit, visited 1 class as I felt an inner desire of learning Sanskrit, and it started with English and one by one with the spelling. Fortunately, the professor was incredibly good and became faster and faster. Well, it was not possible at times. So we at Hindu University of America have a whole Sanskrit division and program and series of courses from beginner to the master's level. So if you want to learn Sanskritam and you've had challenges at other places, please look into our Sanskrit program. We have a certificate program in spoken Sanskritam. We have a Bhagavad Gita through Sanskritam where you're learning the Bhagavad Gita and Sanskritam at the same time. And we have an MA program in Sanskrit, and we can get you there through the different phases of wherever you are, starting without even knowing the script. So of course, Sanskrit is, and it was amazing to hear, and let me bring it back to Sri Aurobindo, is he was a polyglot, right? So Sri Aurobindo, and the way that you're talking about the science of language and how that reinterpretation or the application of understanding, I don't know if you knew a dozen languages, global languages, and read and was so proficient and prolific, and how that played into it, his understanding and his context in the modern world and how he laid it out going forward. And so with that, Dr. Mishra, maybe I can hand it back to you to give some more general thoughts. And then if we don't have any other questions, maybe you'll elicit some from our audience. And we have a few more minutes. You know, we're at the top of the hour, but please do fill out the poll. If you haven't yet, let us know if you're interested in taking the course. And stick around if we have some more questions or you have something that you want to share, please do. I saw a lot of people typing in the chat to just the hosts and panelists so everyone can see. I appreciate some of those comments and I'll try and respond, but Dr. Mishra will see them also, and maybe he wants to take some of those into his response.
Yeah, some of the questions which I have responded, typing my answer. And yeah, are there any other questions that I need to answer?
No, nothing in particular. There were definitely some comments in the chat box where there was conversation. You don't need to check in on that. I'll respond individually. There's some interesting stuff though. I think you can take it. You answered some of them in your conversation anyway in the context. So I think you got a lot of it. Yeah, no, you have a way of hitting the forest with the tree, you know, like talking about the details, but also how it relates. And I think that's the beauty of all of it. So let me hand it back to you for some closing thoughts.
Hello, I missed. Hello.
Yeah.
Am I audible? Because I missed certain words.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, just you covered a lot of what the people were asking in their comments already. And so if you want to get into your closing kind of thoughts and bring it all together.
Okay. Sure.
And if you're going to be teaching other courses in the future, just ask, are you going to be teaching anything specifically about the Bhagavad Gita? Now, I know there's in the second course, you're going to look at Sri Aurobindo's kind of interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita, but if you want to include all of that in your closing statement.
Yeah, in future also, like we're planning to come out with, come up with more courses on the Veda, Upanishads and the Gita specific courses in the light of Sri Aurobindo, but that's not yet planned. It's the future plan. But, like I would again recommend this course to all, not just because I'm teaching, but there is a lot of like all the previous students who have attended this course. So I could see that like happiness on their faces, like how much they could enjoy and then understand the deeper aspects of Sanatana Dharma through Sri Aurobindo. So it gives an opportunity not just to come in contact with the greatest writings of Sri Aurobindo, but the course also helps understanding oneself, one's own consciousness, the different parts of our being, and then how do we make the sadhana more practical, and then create a kind of self-discipline for us, so then we move forward on the path laid down by the Rishi tradition of Bharat. So it will open up more towards the vision of the rishis, and then make us familiar with not only their contributions, but the way they have realized. So it helps in organizing our own life in a very disciplined manner. So it's not just going to be an academic course or academic understanding of the things, but uh, in a deeper sense, that it's going to shape our life and give a deeper understanding of our life. So then we continue as students of life and shaping our life and transforming our life, and then serving or fulfilling the real purpose of life. So therefore, I think very aptly HUA has labeled it as lifelong learning. So one remains as a student of life, and then this is the conviction that we will be gaining through, and the confidence we will gaining through, and then we will have the right kind of strength and understanding for leading the right kind of life, and then fulfillment of the real purpose of life, by getting a deeper understanding about life, our consciousness, different parts of our being, and then what connection it has with the and then how manifest this higher world of light, truth, and ananda in our life, and then experience the joy and delight by participating in this world, but not by escaping from this world. So that's what was the message of Sri Aurobindo. Therefore, he put it like as a tagline of Sri Aurobindo was, all life is yoga. No aspect of life is to be rejected or neglected, but has to be accepted and shaped and transformed. So this is the message that we get from Sri Aurobindo's teachings, and throughout the course, we will be discovering many secrets of life, many secrets of our Shastra, many secrets of our tradition, and then we will have a clear understanding of all these, so then it helps in our life. So that's all I can say as a concluding remark. And then thank you all for attending, and thank you HUA for organizing this.
Thank you. Dhanyavad. We'll be in touch. See you in class.
Namaste.